If you're a fan of Marvel Omnibuses, you need to read this book. Hey, all you true believers and newcomers alike. Hope you're doing well. My name is Superfly Comics Guy, and I'll be your host because we got something very special to look at today. The long out-of-print New Avengers Omnibus Volume 1 by Michael Bendis. I had such a good time with this book, guys. I cannot wait to talk about it. I literally just finished reading it, but I hope you'll join me as we take a look at the cover, the spine, the contents collected, the build quality, even though this is an old edition of the book, and of course, a flip through where I discuss some of my thoughts, opinions, and recommendations. If you like this video, you know how to show it. And if you're a nerd like me, leave a comment down below. And thank you so much to those who have been commenting on my recent videos. I've been having a blast just talking to you guys, whether it's just you guys sharing your thoughts about the art of a book or asking me questions. I've just been having a lot of fun. So thank you, and keep it up. Let's keep the discussion going. But gather your friends and ready up for action because we are taking a look at the blockbuster that is the New Avengers Volume 1. Let's go. So here we are, guys, the standard cover to the New Avengers Omnibus Volume 1 by David Finch. I love it so much. This is the cover to New Avengers number 1. David Finch is awesome. You're going to have some really, really good artwork by him in this book. I do believe there is a variant cover of this omnibus by Joe Quesada. If I can find an image of it, I'll throw it up here now. I'm not really a big fan of that variant cover. I do know it's super rare, apparently, so I mean, if you can get your hands on it, good for you, but I just don't really like how it looks, especially like that bulky barrel-chested cap in the middle. Ugh. Yeah, more than happy with this cover right here. Here is the spine. Got this really cool red lightning design. And the back. You got your cover gallery and $125 US cover price, $140 in Canada. I somehow lucked out in the past month on eBay and found someone selling it for cover price. I couldn't believe my eyes, and yeah, just very thankful that I have this book and was able to read it. But let's take a look under the dust jacket. Bam, there we go. If you're newer to the omnibus game, you might be thinking, wow, that's a very different design for an omnibus. Well, this is how they used to design omnibuses back in like the early 2010s, some late 2000s even. But you got this like fake leather look, which I find really cool. This is like officially the oldest omnibus in my collection now. Came out in 2012, New Avengers with the red foil, and super cool here. More red foil on the sides, New Avengers, Marvel Omnibus, and nothing on the back, just more of that fake leather. But let's start taking a look at the inside and start talking about some of this story. So here we go, guys. Taking a look at the New Avengers Omnibus Volume 1. I enjoyed this so much. Pretty much right after I finished the Moon Knight Omnibus Volume 1 book that I previously reviewed most recently, I jumped straight into this and just hammered right through it. It only took me like a few days. It was so good. Here we have this kind of a table of contents here, which was really helpful, actually. It helped me kind of plan out my reading a little bit. And it kicks off with Avengers number 500. So what is this series? So in the early 2000s, I think this came out around 2004, this is kind of a planned reintroduction / rejuvenation of the Avengers series. That's the best way to think about it. Michael Bendis is the writer throughout this entire book, and basically his idea was, look guys, Justice League has all of DC's coolest and most popular heroes on one team, so shouldn't we be doing the same thing for the Avengers? That was his idea. So basically the premise here is after a catastrophic event occurs at Avengers Mansion, the existing Avengers team is forced to disband. Many of the existing team members just go their separate ways. But one day, something serious happens at the Raft, which is basically a supermax prison off the coast of Manhattan, New York. That event at the Raft forces a bunch of nearby heroes to work together in a sort of impromptu team-up. Basically, whoever happens to be there just has to do their best to help out. But that event at the Raft demonstrates that the Avengers can't just simply disappear. There will always be situations like that where they are needed. So this prompts the creation of a new team, the New Avengers, and it's an excuse to kind of introduce some new characters. Suddenly, you have a mixture of classic Avengers characters like Captain America and Iron Man on the team, but also a dose of newcomers such as Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and Wolverine, who really helped to mix up the team dynamic. This idea was super controversial behind the scenes. Bendis, from what I understand, got a lot of pushback from higher-ups about including characters, especially like Spider-Man and Wolverine, who are typically more solo guys. But it really, really works well here. I mean, Bendis does a really, really good job of writing everybody with a distinct personality. So you'll have like the smart-ass Spider-Man, the headstrong Cap, Iron Man being the kind of tech specialist, Spider-Woman contributes her S.H.I.E.L.D. agent training, Luke Cage is kind of the brawler type. A lot of the time, with the writing in this book, you could just close your eyes and only focus on the dialogue, and you'll still be able to tell exactly exactly which character is saying which line, so that's a really good sign. Yeah, even Maria Hill appears at one point. God, she was such a dick. I was so surprised by her portrayal in this book, because all I really know about Maria Hill comes from the MCU. She was such a jerk in this book. But anyway, my personal favorite on the team was Spider-Man. That should come to no surprise to people who have watched some of my other videos. But I loved how Spider-Man was written in this. His banter with the other team members is great. There were actually several times where I would catch myself laughing out loud at something Spider-Man said. And that doesn't happen very often. I don't usually catch myself laughing out loud, but Spider-Man was awesome in this. That's not to say that there isn't some clunky writing every now and then. I mean, there definitely is. There's a bit where Doctor Strange comes and introduces himself, and he's all like, "I am Doctor Strange, practitioner of the mystical arts, and I have achieved master level." It's like, okay, slow down there, bud. But honestly, the writing is still excellent overall. You're not going to want to put this book down once you start. Bendis in general is just really great at writing characters that feel real. The material in here isn't always going to be the deepest, per se, but if you think about it, not every conversation that we have as human beings is super deep and introspective, so that way, the writing feels really believable here. One downside I will say in here is that some issues have a really weird timeline. For example, they might start in the present for a bit and then flash back to give you some additional context and setup, and then flash forward a little bit more, but not quite to the present. Then continue with the present again for a bit more before flashing back once again. And it can kind of mess with the pacing of that issue a little bit. So, I don't know, it might have been better, honestly, to just keep the events in chronological order for that issue. Kind of reminds me, if any of you have seen The Witcher Season 1, that's kind of what they did with that season. So, if you're familiar with that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, this group of Avengers needs to figure out who was behind the event at the raft, what was the purpose behind it all, and they go on a bunch of missions together to uncover more and more of the truth. Actually, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me a lot of the game Ultimate Alliance, if anyone's familiar with that. That's a fantastic game. Basically, you create your own team of superheroes and go on missions together and follow a story. It was awesome. That's kind of what it felt like here, just because, the New Avengers are based at Stark Tower and they're going on these cool missions together. I thought it was awesome. And the other thing is, I was surprised is just how many similarities there were to the MCU in here. And I'm not just talking about the Avengers movies and stuff like that, but even with more recent projects like WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness, if you've been keeping up with that, it was really, it took me completely by surprise. It was cool to see the original plot points and source material from which the MCU pulled. So if you're a fan of the MCU and the Avengers, and you want some goodness to read, this will be right up your alley. I mean, this book's marketed as a really good starting point for Avengers, and it is, but I will say that it does help if you have some familiarity with what was going on in the Marvel-verse around this time. Because this book will reference events sometimes, such as House of M, the Kree Skrull War. Civil War actually happens right about, I want to say, 2/3 of the way through this book. So it does help to have a little bit of pre-existing context for those events so you don't get too jarred when they do come up. Like, for example, for me, I'm not super familiar with the House of M story outside of like the general gist. And the book does a decent job, to be fair, of explaining everything you need to know. But I probably would have benefited from just knowing a little bit more about that event specifically beforehand. So that's something to keep in mind. As for the art in this book, that's another super strong plus. You're getting the work of various artists in here, but the standout for me, without a doubt, is absolutely David Finch. He does a lot of the early issues in here, and his work just consistently made my jaw drop. Like, I would genuinely be stunned by some of the panels in this book, and I would just have to stop reading and admire the art for a few seconds, and it blew me away, honestly. He kind of reminds me a lot of, his style reminds me a lot of Jim Lee, actually. I don't know if that's blasphemous in any way, but I don't know. I feel like David Finch is very talented with kind of gritty action scenes and dynamic character poses. I think his standout character in this book is Spider-Woman. I don't know what it is about the way he draws her, but it was so good. Something about it just jumped out at me. And to be honest, you could probably even start a drinking game with the amount of times Luke Cage ends up shirtless during a battle scene. But no, drink responsibly. I hereby hold zero liability for any liver damage that occurs as the result of that drinking game. Every now and then you also get some like cool retro flashback scenes where they use kind of the Silver Age and Bronze Age art for a few pages. I thought that was super cool. But in terms of other artists, like I said, you get various other artists in here, like Mike Deodato Jr., Alex Maleev, Mark Silvestri, I'm trying to think, Lionel Francis Yu. I mean, the style switches a lot, but it's consistently pretty great overall. Honestly, there's probably only like 1 or 2 issues in this entire book where I would say the art was like downright bad at any particular point. But other than that, super, super strong on the art front, for sure. And let me quickly take you through some of the extras as well, because there's some really cool ones in here. Here we start off with some variant covers. Pretty cool. I think that's the direct market variant for this book that I showed off earlier. Just, I don't know, I'm not really a big fan of it. Really cool Spider-Man variant here by Steve McNiven. So it's basically going through each of the issues and showing you a variant for each one. And there's this really cool one here where they kind of combine all the different variants into one. I thought that was pretty neat. More variants here. Yeah, you can see this is kind of what I was talking about before, where every now and then you'll have a few pages that kind of have an older art style. But yeah, those are more variants. Here's a nice spread page variant. Very nice. But let me show you some other cool stuff I saw. Yeah, this I thought was really awesome. So basically the new Avengers have like a database of a bunch of villains. And it's really cool because like not only do you get like the character's history or whatever, but you get like notes from each of the team members about the villains. So like there'll be commentary from Spider-Man or Captain America about each of these characters. I thought that was brilliant. It was like super immersive to like watch the heroes or read about the heroes commenting on all of these particular villains. I don't know. I'd like to see more of this type of thing from extras. This was super cool. Let me quickly flip through that. There's a lot of character files in here, so I'm not going to go through every single one, obviously. But let's go here. What do we have? Yeah, issue by issue breakdown here by Brian Michael Bendis. Some layouts. This is something cool. An interview with Brian Michael Bendis talking about his thoughts on the book. And this was super awesome. It's basically like a walkthrough of one of the bits in this book where David Finch offers his commentary on the art and like what did he like, what did he not like, what he might have done differently. That's another thing I'd like to see more of in extras for omnibuses. That would be awesome. I love getting that kind of insight into the creative process. Here we have a printography, they call it. I learned a new word today, of, what is that, like every Avengers cover up to, I wish I could see, I don't know, number 500 it looks like, something like that. Some weird stuff there, we're not going to talk about it. Script for issue number 1, really cool. There's so many extras in here. I took a lot of time just flipping through the extras at the end once I finished reading. There's a cool spread page, and it's labeling all the heroes, or characters that you see on that panel there. A few more character bios. Some pencils by David Finch. Oh God, I love his art so much. Definitely gives you a lot of reason to keep flipping through this book just to get more David Finch artwork. Here's some layouts by Steve McNiven as well, who also does a really, really good job. Definitely no shortage of amazing art in this book. Some pencils and inks. Awesome stuff. We're coming up towards the end of the extras section. There we go, and there we are. That's the end. Let me quickly show you the build quality. So 1,208 pages is what you get in this omnibus, which honestly it doesn't feel like it with how fast I read through it. There's how my eye looks. Keep in mind, I did get this book used. The previous owner didn't do the best job of taking care of the spine, so the eye is a little bit jacked up. It made it a little bit difficult to read towards the middle part, but I mean, this book is long out of print, and I found it for cover price, so honestly, I can't complain for being able to find it and read through it. But what that does mean is that you get pretty much no gutter loss. It lies super flat because of that gigantic eye. Like, look, here's a spread page, losing absolutely nothing, which is rare for a book of this size. And in terms of page quality, this book is from 2012, so the paper is nice and thick. You're not going to have any issues with color bleed or anything like that. All right, so wrapping up my thoughts on this book, everyone says this is one of the best Avengers runs, and I can totally see why. After reading it, this is a must-own Marvel Omnibus in my opinion. This is so good. Whether you're an MCU fan, or you're looking for a starting point to read Avengers, or you like Michael Bendis, or you're a fan of amazing artwork, there's something for everybody in here. And this is a super quick read. I split up my time across like a session or a couple sessions per day, but then I would constantly catch myself just making excuses to read more and more of this book just because I was so hooked. I couldn't stop. I'd put the book down, and then a few hours later I'd come back and be like, oh, I wonder what the Avengers are up to now, and then I'd have to read a few more issues to see what happens next. It's crazy, honestly. It's honestly crazy to think about how good the 2000s were for comics. I mean, Michael Bendis alone was working on this. He was working on Daredevil, Ultimate Spider-Man, Jessica Jones. Christopher Priest was doing his Black Panther run. J. Michael Straczynski was on Amazing Spider-Man. Over in the DC side, Batman had just come out of his No Man's Land phase, and he was getting stories like Hush and Under the Red Hood and Grant Morrison's run, and Jeff Johns was doing all sorts of crazy things. The 2000s, I think we don't think about it a lot, but the 2000s were an awesome time for comics. It's quickly becoming my favorite era, at least from what I've read so far. Now, this book is out of print, so it's going to be difficult to find, but I don't think you should overpay for it or anything like that. This, if anything, this is a book I can see getting reprinted within the next year or two, just because of how desired it is and how good it is. So honestly, hold on, and it'll probably be out before you know it. You'll get a fancy new reprint, and hopefully they'll continue the series with a volume 2. That would be awesome, and they can continue with Civil War and all those other events that happened around this time. That would be awesome. But yeah, once the opportunity presents itself, this is a book I think everybody should own and read, without a doubt. But anyway, that's been my review of the New Avengers Omnibus Volume 1 by Brian Michael Bendis. Let me know what you thought about the review or the book if you've read it, the New Avengers series. Please leave your comments down below. I'm having a lot of fun talking to you guys, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to catch you in another video real soon. You have yourself a great day. I've been Superfly Comics Guy, and until next time, keep reading. Bye guys.